Hello bookworms, I'm Becca and today I'm doing the Out of My Comfort Zone book tag. This tag was created by Emma from Emma Books, and the first order of business is to make a rule for yourself. So basically you choose a genre or specific books that you find yourself using a lot during book tags for answers, and then you can't use anything from that genre for these answers. So I know that I read a lot of young adult contemporary, so those end up being my answers for book tags. So for this book tag, I'm not going to use any YA contemporaries for my answers. I tried to stick to fantasy or paranormal books, and somehow I found books that could fit. The first question is to choose a book that is an exception to genres or tropes that you don't typically like. I went with A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and a lot of times I compare it to a very adult version of Twilight because it is an adult paranormal series. This is the first book in the series, and it has to do with witches and vampires and demons, and I read this when I was kind of first starting college, so still riding that like post-Twilight wave where everything was vampires and werewolves and everything paranormal was coming out, and I didn't want to be a part of that anymore, so I didn't think that I would like this, but the tropes and the characters are so believable in this book that it feels like, well, of course historians are witches, and of course doctors and chemists are vampires, and of course artsy people like actors and musicians and artists and writers are demons. Like, that totally makes sense. Because it was done so well, this became an instant favorite because it didn't feel like it was a tired trope just being done again because Twilight. It's felt fresh, and that is one of the reasons why I love this book so much and why I absolutely kick myself for not continuing on with the trilogy. Question number 2 is to choose a book that you enjoyed from a genre that you previously held some stigma for. I went with Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. This is a young adult fantasy book, and I always bring this book as an example for people who don't read a lot of fantasy and don't know where to start. Start with Poison Study. This is high fantasy, and I could not believe how much I loved this book. The world was so believable. Everything flowed together. The writing is impeccable. This is like one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, if not my favorite, and I've only read the first book again. So that's a problem because there's more books, which means that if you love this book as much as I do, then you can continue on with the series and read more from this world. I just think that like the world building was done so fantastically. A lot of times with fantasy books, especially ones that are series, I hear a lot of people saying that like the first book in the series is nothing but world building, and this is not the case. You get a lot of plot and a lot going on in this book. So if you want a book that has like so many different twists and turns that just completely derails from what the original premise of the book is supposed to be, but does it in a way that like makes sense and keeps you on the edge of your seat from start to finish, Poison Study is like the book to read. I love this book so freaking much, and I need to reread it so that I can continue on with the series. Question number 3 is a book that you didn't realize was out of your comfort zone until you started to read it. I, surprisingly enough, am going with The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, mostly because it took me so long to get through this book. When I read the back of it, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's totally up my alley, like paranormal, very occult. And when I started reading it, I remember just being like, oh no, oh my goodness. The writing is just dripping with atmosphere, which is something that I was not used to at all, but is really nice. Like, it's amazing. I just was not expecting it. Just how dense the story was. I was not expecting it at all. It ended up being something that I probably would not have picked up, and I'm a little bit surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did, especially since going into it I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna love it, and then I was surprised that I enjoyed it. I am having so much trouble continuing on with the series though because of the writing and because that it's so out of my comfort zone. So even though the plot seemed like it would be in my comfort zone, the writing and everything that went along with it just like booted it way out of my comfort zone very quickly. Question number 4 is to choose a friend or a booktuber that reads books that are out of your comfort zone and inspires you to pick up books that are out of your comfort zone, and then to talk about books that you have read because of this person. I don't have a specific person, but I do follow a lot of channels where they mainly read like sci-fi, fantasy, like high fantasy, and adult fiction, literary fiction, things that I do not read at all. The reason that I follow all these channels is not because of the books that they're talking about, but because of their personalities. And I could listen to them talk about these books all day long and know that I would never ever read these books, but the way that they are talking about it is making it so interesting. That's why I pick up classics like Anne of Green Gables and Stephen King books, and all of the fantasy books that I have are because of like the people who are so passionate about the books that they read and can talk about it in a way that makes it interesting even for people who do not read those genres. So I wish that I could think of people off the top of my head, but I will link some channels down below in the description that are perfect for, like, if you read a lot of contemporary, these people read different books and they make interesting content and interesting videos, so I will leave all of that down below in the description for you guys to check out. Speaking of that, question number 5 is to choose a book that's out of your comfort zone that you would like to read. I had so many to choose from, but I ended up going with A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is the exclusive collector's edition, and it's absolutely beautiful. I know that it's completely out of my comfort zone because it's an adult high fantasy book, but alright, so my video cut off, but basically I was just saying that I really want to read this book because of how much other people have talked about how much they love this book, so I'm sure that I will end up giving it a try someday. And finally, question number 6 is a book or genre that is so out of what you normally read that you will probably never give it another chance or a chance again. And for this, I'm going to choose the genre of literary fiction. I've given it a couple chances and most recently, which is not even all that recent anymore, I tried reading The 13th Tale, which everyone loved so much and I could not get into at all. Oh my goodness, I tried for so long to get into that book, and I think it was after that one that I was kind of like, I think that I'm done with literary fiction, anything that heavy. I don't care what people say about it. That's kind of why I haven't picked up The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because to me that just screams literary fiction and I feel like I'm not going to be into it, and then I'm just going to be disappointed that I can't get into it like everyone else. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong down below in the comments, but I don't think I am. So there you guys go. That is the out of my comfort zone book tag. I will leave some people tagged down below in the description. This was a really fun tag to do. Thank you so much, Emma, for creating it. That's all I got for you guys today, and I will see you next time.